that, when she went through her experience, it was the early 90s, and we're talking about, well, society hasn't really moved on that much. Is that been your experience as well? Do you think we've actually progressed?
I think we haven't progressed that much. I think there's more help out there now than there is before. When I left home about 86, there was no help at all, because when I went to the police and told them this is what's going on, this is what's happening, my
How
parents...
courageous of you to leave that situation and go to the authorities, because Asian women, it's drilled into our head, it's your izzat, you never air your dirty laundry outside the house. How did the police react to you?
Well, the reason why the police got involved was purely because my parents lied about my age, you see. They said that I was 15 rather than being over 16.
Right.
So that's why they came to me. When I actually told them, well, this is what's going on, my parents want me to marry a guy from India. I don't want to get married to him. And, I ended up telling them this is the reason why it's happening. They turned around and says, well, it's your culture. It's what you've got to do, so you've got to go back home.
Really?
Yeah, so that is what they expected from you.
So there was no support from them? They were like,
there
okay,
was no support at all whatsoever. And especially when you're at a young age, you're not entitled to benefits, you're not entitled to a lot of things, purely because you're 16 years of age. There was no help out there at all.
Where did you go? Who did you turn to?
I turned to one of my friends, who I actually went and stayed at my friend's house. But because you're such a vulnerable person and you think that because you've been drilled in such a young age that nobody wants you, nobody loves you, nobody cares for you, you can become very vulnerable, and you can see a lot of things out there, from trafficking, all sorts of things. And you can understand why some girls who leave home end up going there, because they think that they're worth nothing. So that's why they tend to go trafficking or going on drugs or anything to survive.
Did you make any mistakes?
I didn't.
Not necessarily,
I didn't, but I was almost led to go into trafficking. And I think because I opened up and I told my sister-in-laws that, especially when I thought that, she would understand, being from here and being British, and I told her how I felt and why she's turned that little thing into a big thing. So now they class me as a prostitute.
Oh, my God.
So that is what I'm classed as in my society.
So the next question, where do you have any support from the community, is a no.
Is a no. I mean, people who get to know me for who I am actually are now showing respect, but it's just the family still doesn't show that respect.
Well, what about your partner, your current partner?
Well, he's very good. He supports me, but obviously with the family pressure, that causes a lot of arguments between ourselves, because sometimes we can end up that we want to split up. But again, it's not ourselves, it's more to do with the family and the society, because when I go to weddings and functions, all my sister-in-laws will sit on one side and I will sit with my brother-in-laws. So that, and then again, well, she's with the boys, so she's got to be a prostitute because she only gets on with guys.
Oh my God. How did your partner react to your history? Was he accepting right from the beginning, or was this something you worked on?
He was fine about it. He was okay about it, but it was more my mother-in-law that didn't accept it, because she said that, well, hang on, she's left a guy, because they thought that I was married, but I was never married. Mm-hmm. I just was like, where, they did a rule where they come to your house, put a chunni on your head, and that was it. So it was never official engagement or anything. I only met him once. So I never really met him at all.
Well, you're lucky. A lot of brides meet their husbands on the wedding day.
Yeah, so I was lucky in that way, just because we had to go to a photographer to take photographs to show the embassy that we were together, you see. So I only met him at that time. So because of all that, and leaving home and having permed hair and, wearing leggings.
Permed hair? How could you, Kelly?
Yeah, but in the 80s that wasn't allowed. So because I did all that, I'm tarnished as, you are a so...
You're fortunate in the sense that your husband is one of the few men one of the few Asian men actually, that's strong enough to deal with what you've been through. Mm-hmm. Because, men, I'm not trying to generalize here, but Asian men, no matter what they've done in their past or what they've experienced in their own history, they still expect their wife to be
well, that's it.
Completely virginal with no background. She had no life before she met him. That's what they would prefer.
And that's still the case today, because that is why men still go abroad to try and get a wife from India, because that's what they believe, that girls over here are too Western. But if they go back home, they're going to get a virgin and get their chapatis on time and, things like that, because they're Asian women, and that is what's still in their minds.
What kind of advice would you give to a woman who is just at the beginning stage of the start of abuse? it's mental abuse. Maybe he slapped around a little bit because in our culture it is a man showing his manhood. If he's giving you a little slap or he's giving you a little push, it's very manly almost. What advice would you give a woman that's watching us now?
It's not just purely just manly. I'm not saying that men don't do that. Men do that, but I'm also saying that you can get abuse from the whole family as well. So that's what we've got to say as well, that there is help for women who suffer, whether they're in domestic or mental abuse.
So do you think that for Asians we need to change the definition of what domestic abuse is? Because in all my research, domestic abuse talks about when your partner hits you, when your partner is psychologically abusing you, but with our culture, it's not just the partner.
No, because if a wife is getting beaten up by her partner, 9 out of 10, if you go to your spouse and say, well, this is what's happening, she'll say, well, why can't you just stay quiet? It's your fault. Why are you answering him back? You know, if you don't answer him back, if he's had a bit to drink or if he's talking, just stay quiet. Just let him carry on. He comes back home to you. What's your problem?
Right, right.
And then the sister-in-laws are doing exactly the same thing as well. Or he's our brother, we can't get involved. Or sometimes they don't like what the woman's
Kelly,
done.
you know, for argument's sake, if this was happening to your sister-in-laws, what would then your spouse say about that?
Oh, well, then it's different because it's their daughters.
Of course.
Then they would go and help and sort it out. But they keep forgetting you are too somebody else's daughter as well. But that's what our society forgets about. They think women are a bit like slavery.
Kelly, I commend you for being brave enough to be on our panel and talk about your experience. You're watching Broken Silence. We're talking about domestic abuse. We'll be back after this short break. Hi, welcome back to Broken Silence. I'm Sanyya Gardez. Today we're talking about domestic violence. And as we're hearing in our conversation today, for Asians, domestic abuse can come in many different forms and not necessarily just from your partner. Joining me on the panel is Kelly Kaur from Through Care Housing and Support and Maimouna Islam from SaveYourRights.org. Thank you both for joining us. Maimouna, we'll start with you. Can you tell us what your organization does?
Well, we are a human rights campaigning organization, but we specifically work on very sensitive issues in our community, such as forced marriages and any civil matters, family matters. And
now, as we heard from Kelly, you brought up forced marriages. Is forced marriage a form of abuse?
Yes, it is high level of abuse, which is normal abuse, probably I would say emotional, or by talking to saying something, financial and this sort of stuff. Then you get like violent ones, which is beating up and the stuff. And this one includes every sides and makes you do something, so which is very high. Yes.
Do you have equal numbers of male and females that you work with?
You mean the victims or?
Yes, the victims.
If you're talking about the domestic abuse, I can say probably you can have argument, but I can say for your lifetime experience, every man and woman, they experience at least once a domestic abuse.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that men also suffer
Yes.
at the hand of their partners when it comes to abuse.
It's not from the partners. I can say from the mom, from their cousins, from their uncles, from the dad.
It's so interesting, Maimouna, that you're saying this. And Kelly, you touched upon this earlier. Now, when you talk about domestic violence, I think the misconception is that it is just your partner that can inflict that kind of abuse on you. Now, Kelly, that's clearly not the case. That's not what happened with you. And Maimouna, you're saying that no, it's still domestic abuse if it comes from your parents, from your in-laws, from your extended family.
Yes, it does. I can give you two examples. One is for the children. Maybe the children is a little bit cheeky or naughty, and some money goes missing from the house or dad's wallet. Probably he was drunk and left somewhere, or paid, gave a wrong note. But he's coming and abusing his son.
Right. Okay.
This is one example, which is
And your organization deals with family civil issues.
Yes, but we don't go to these sort of issues.